Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Lenox Justifier of Innocence, created by Zeus and Demeter to save humanity. I am here as Josephine today, and this is Mr. Buddy the guard dog. Now in today's episode, as I told you last week, we are going to be pausing on the story of the predators in order to complete a patron's request. Now, just a quick reminder before we get started, I did just want to say that I hope that you guys have an amazing weekend and that you are enjoying all the stories thus far. And just reminding you that although all these stories are based on true events, they are very loosely based on true events, and all of the missions are carried out in fantasy, the characters are fictitious, and the justice is also carried out in imagination. Some of the topics that we cover are sensitive in nature, so just want to forewarn you on that. And with that said, we hope that you enjoy the show and enjoy our fantasy justice story. A tattered man. We live in a society where most of the time it's women and children who are victims of violent acts. But just because they are the most vulnerable, it doesn't mean that it only happens to them. Men can just as easily fall prey to attacks. It happens more than people like to admit. The man is supposed to be the protector, strong, able, both physically and emotionally stable. Yes, men are physically stronger and men are less emotional, but that does not make them exempt from mistreatment. Joseph grew up in a modest, immigrant, hard-working household. His father, a pastor, and his mom worked part-time in retail. His parents worked hard to instill good morals and values in Joseph. Joseph really looked up to his father. He was a leader in his community, he provided well for his family, and he always treated his mother like a queen. He was a true gentleman. He provided not just financially, but spiritually and emotionally. Joseph decided as a young boy that when he grew up, he was going to be an amazing husband to a wife and a father to his kids. Joseph took the example that his father set for him and then took the necessary steps to get there. He did not just want to emulate him, but he wanted to improve upon it. Joseph had self-discipline. He always worked hard. He took care of his physical health, and he embodied impeccable work ethic and practices. He went to church, he prayed daily, and he saved himself for the woman that would one day be his wife. One day, Joseph met Isabella in church. It was a typical Sunday, sunny and beautiful outside, and they started to become acquainted. That acquaintance later turned into love, and after a short courtship, they married and started on having a family. Both so young. He was 24 and she was 19. Joseph worked hard. He worked his way up at his job. He rented an apartment and he got everything that they needed to welcome the baby. Joseph was a dedicated husband and a proud new daddy. He was in his glory. They didn't have an extravagant lifestyle, but Joseph worked hard to provide a roof over their heads, keep food in their bellies, and clothes on their bodies. Isabella was able to stay home with their son. Feeling truly blessed, the following year they welcomed a second child, a precious baby girl. For Joseph, he was in his glory. He had a beautiful wife, his perfect little boy, and his little princess, blessed with the perfect family. He continued to work hard, and he searched for a better career with better growth opportunities so that Isabella could always stay home with her kids and have everything she ever needed. Though he made enough to support his family, Isabella started to grow restless. She wanted to work part-time and be able to get out of the house. Joseph understood her need and her wants, and he appreciated that she wanted to contribute to the family in more ways than just being a homemaker. He realized how important it was for her to establish adult relationships outside of the family, so he agreed happily. His parents were more than happy to get this time to watch the kids, so Isabella went to work. At first, it seemed to make her happy, but over the next few months, Joseph noticed a shift in her personality. She had turned 21, and seeing all of her co-workers going out, enjoying the single life, it made Isabella feel resentment. She wanted to experience these things herself. Joseph did his best to be understanding. He wanted to respect her wishes, and he wanted his wife to be happy. So he didn't see anything wrong with an occasional night out with the girls. But those nights became more common. It was almost every night. Isabella was becoming unrecognizable. She went from a quiet, conservative, church-going, family-oriented, God-fearing woman to a party girl. She was dressing provocatively, drinking excessively, staying out till 3, 4 in the morning, and neglecting her 2 children. When Joseph tried to speak his concerns, Isabella became violent. "I'll do what I want," she shouted, while slinging a wine bottle at Joseph's head. Joseph was stunned. He was confused at this behavior. It was as if she was a different person altogether. Joseph then sought the advice of his pastor. He was trying to understand Isabella's needs. He tried everything to please her, but her outbursts kept escalating. Joseph didn't know what to do. She became controlling, she emasculated him, and she was becoming increasingly violent. Joseph desperately wanted to save his family. He pleaded with Isabella to go get counseling. She ended up agreeing, and with that, he went to work feeling hopeful. When he returned to the apartment, it was very quiet. As he looked around, he realized Isabella had taken all of her belongings and some of the kids. When he went to check his bank accounts, they were all drained. She had maxed out all the credit cards with cash advances, and she disappeared. There was no note, no phone call, nothing. Joseph was left alone in his apartment, without a penny to his name and without his family. Her father claimed that he did not know where she was. Joseph contacted the police, but they were telling him that there was nothing they could do. She was an adult and the mother of her children, so it was not kidnapping and it was not running away. And since there were no signs of foul play, they had no reason to search for her. They told him to be patient and just wait for her to contact him. Joseph was in a state of disassociated shock. He was emotionally, financially broken, mourning the loss of his family, left to worry and wonder about their safety and their well-being. Joseph, he couldn't take it, and he couldn't stay there. He was going out of his mind. Her father said that he still hadn't heard from her. Not a letter, not a postcard, not a phone call or a text. And then he proceeded to tell him that she had always been troubled. As a teen, she had gotten in a lot of trouble for stealing, manipulating, and getting in fights. She spent more than 2 years in a teen lockup for troubled girls. He hoped that when she got out and got involved with the church, that she would never go back to that lifestyle. And then when she met him, he felt that she had changed for the better. But it was only temporary. Isabella had gone back to her roots. Joseph was absolutely stunned, for he had no idea. They were together for 4 years, and she had never once mentioned any of it. He had married a stranger. But still, even knowing of her troubled past, he wanted his wife back and his kids. He was able to look past that so that he could help her and they can continue having their beautiful family. Over the next 2 months, Joseph sold all of his possessions. He worked 7 days a week to recuperate funds so that he could leave the state. He couldn't stay there anymore. Down south he headed, trying to rebuild himself in the sunnier states. Almost a year had gone by, and still nothing, no sign of her or his kids. Then one day, the phone rang. It was her. Joseph paid for tickets to fly them back to the States. His family, although happy that he found her, they cautioned him about her intentions. But being a man of God, he took his vows very seriously. He wanted to help her and put his family back together. So Isabella moved back in. For the next several months, everything seemed perfect again. Joseph was relieved. He was happy to have his wife and his kids. And then it started. She demanded that he cut off communication with his family and his friends, stating that they were toxic and not happy for him, filling his mind with doubts about her. She included her father in this statement. She claimed that everything he said about her was lies, and that he hurt her when she was a child. Once she felt she had completed isolating him and had him completely under her control and spell, the cycle of mistreatment began. She started having violent outbursts, putting her hands on him. He got to the point where he would have to hide his physical injuries by wearing turtlenecks, long sleeves, using makeup in 90-degree weather. It was far worse than before. Her behavior had escalated to a point that he was in fear for his life. He was cut off from his support system, and he had nowhere to turn. Isabella would disappear for days at a time, leaving him and his kids. She was seeing another man. She attempted to have Joseph charged with battery. She filed false reports, and when that didn't work, she grew even more violent. Joseph not only feared for himself, but he feared for the safety of his children. He went to the police, but the police did not take his claims seriously, even showing them his injuries. and the scars that he had, and still all he felt was mocked. When one of them had said, "How much damage can a 115-pound woman really do?" Joseph felt ashamed and embarrassed. Isabella was unhinged, and Joseph was her prey. He decided to take matters into his own hands, and he changed the locks, afraid for himself and his kids. This only angered Isabella more. She lost it. So she did what she did best, and she manipulated him. She promised and cried at the door on her hands and knees, begging that she was going to get help. She was going to seek counseling for her anger and her mood swings. She also promised that she would not see that other man, and pleaded for his forgiveness. Joseph, being the kind, forgiving man that he is, he took her back, and that night Isabella played the part of a doting wife and mother. She cooked them dinner, she cleaned the house, she made his favorite dessert. But little did he know that she had a sinister plan in mind. She was done being a mother, and she was done being his wife. She slipped them all drugs, and when they all fell asleep, she proceeded to drag them into the car in the garage. She wrote a note to make it look like Joseph was ending his life and the life of his kids. With the garage door closed, she started the car, locking both the garage door, the house, and then she left. But what she didn't count on is that one of the neighbors would be out walking his dog when he noticed the sound of a running vehicle and saw smoke coming out from underneath the garage door. He thought this was strange, and it's dangerous to have a car running in a garage, so he decided to check. He began knocking on the door frantically, but there was no answer. He tried to peek around, but he couldn't see. So he decided he was going to call 911. Panic was setting in. He decided to run to the side of the house and see if he could look through the windows. When he did that, he noticed Joseph slumped over the steering wheel of the car. He tied up his dog and tried to push the window open. In a panic, he did not know what to do. So he ran over to his house and grabbed a gardening hoe and smashed the window open. He managed to crawl through the window and open the door, pulling Joseph out. At that point, he did not notice the kids in the back. He started to panic, and he was also choking on the fumes. He went to the door to try to open it, but he noticed a padlock on the floor. She had locked it from the inside. Not having time to break the lock, he went back to Joseph to try to give him CPR. When he noticed the two children in the back, he had, in a panic, forgot to shut off the car. So when he realized, he turned the ignition and he grabbed the kids and he decided to put them through the window. And though it was a small drop, he figured that they had a better chance of surviving if he could just get them out. He took them, both being very small. The daughter was 1 and the boy was 2, and dropped them outside the window. By the time the police and the fire trucks had gotten there, he had managed to break the lock and had started to attempt CPR on the kids. Joseph was still unconscious on the ground, but the paramedics were able to get him to wake up, and they were able to get him to the hospital on time. However, the kids were gone. They did not survive. Isabella had come back to the house, acting frantic, playing the part of a grieving mother. She put on her best act, but lucky for Joseph, one of the detectives was a female, and she sensed something was off with Isabella and the way that she was acting. She began to grow very suspicious, and she decided to investigate. When Joseph recovered, he was placed under arrest. Isabella thought that her plan had worked, though it didn't turn out as perfectly as she wanted because he was still alive. He was under arrest. She acted the part, but that female detective, she knew something was off, but she needed evidence. Her partner, he was quick to condemn Joseph, saying he was a weak man. He had claimed abuse at her hands before, and he felt that he was just an unstable man. Joseph was in shock. He was unable to defend himself. He was distraught with grief, and he just could not believe what had happened. Her father, upon hearing the news, he wanted to help Joseph. So he went to the police and he told them that he felt his daughter was guilty of something. Though he loved his daughter very much, she took his grandkids with her, and he could not let this go by unpunished. One day, her father was changing the oil in Josephine's car. When she overheard his conversation with his co-worker, she introduced herself and she told him that she could help get him justice, but that she needed more information. He gladly gave her the female detective's name. Josephine had Amalia look into Isabella's past and look at all of the camera footage in the neighborhood for that day and for weeks prior. Amalia found just enough suspicious activity for the police to get a warrant for Isabella's phone records and for her computer. Searches, they indicated that Isabella had been searching for ways to poison your family, ways to undo someone's life. They began to investigate further. Josephine decided to go to the prison to speak with Joseph. She was able to get him to open up about everything. And the police now believe that it's possible Joseph is the real victim here. But they didn't have enough evidence to arrest Isabella. Only suspicion. Josephine then transformed into Lenox, and she went to go get the evidence that they needed. When she found Isabella, she was dancing and drinking alcohol, kissing her new man. She was celebrating, for she thought she had won. Lenox stood in front of Isabella, towering over her, looking down in disgust. All the noise was now quiet. The crowd had faded into the background, and it was as if just the two of them were there, standing in the dark, facing off. The room was spinning. Isabella attempted to throw her drink at Lenox's face, but she was not successful. Lenox knocked the drink to the floor, and without even raising a finger, Isabella started to cough, and she started to choke. She fell to her knees. It was as if the room was filling up with exhaust fumes, and the carbon monoxide was slowly starting to take her life, just like it took the life of her children. She was feeling all of the pain. all of the fears that she had inflicted on her kids during their short life. Whenever she would fly into a rage and start hitting Joseph, she felt all the blows. She felt all the sadness. She felt unloved. All of the doubts, all of the feelings and pains were consuming her. As Isabella continued to choke, she began to feel everything. All the physical injuries, all the emotional trauma. But Isabella was stubborn. She was manipulative to the core. And she began to think of lies in her mind to try to get out of this. Her lips were turning blue. She was about to go unconscious when she finally broke and she confessed all her crimes. Lenox stood over her. She recorded everything she said, every gruesome detail. Though she was happy she was able to get this confession, she looked at her in such disgust and thought, how can a woman take the life of her own children and attempt to take the life of the one man that loved her more than anything in this world? Isabella was then taken into custody and brought into the interrogation room, where she recounted every gruesome detail of her plan. She confessed to everything she did to Joseph, to the kids, and she also confessed to other victims that she had hurt in the past. It turned out that Isabella was a complete sociopath. She was unable to feel remorse, unable to repent. She is going to spend the rest of her life in prison for taking the life of her 2 children and attempting to take the life of Joseph. They were also able to find justice for the other victim, who was unknown. When Lenox left the interrogation room, she went to go see Joseph. He looked up at her. He sat there, slumped, head down, saying he wished he had died in the car with his kids. Though Lenox cannot undo what had already been done, she could absorb his pain, and so she did. He couldn't take it. He couldn't take what happened to his family, and he was not able to function. But once Lenox absorbed the pain, he was able to start living a normal life and pursue happiness in the future. Though he would always remember what happened, he could function. Lenox was able to help him understand that he had done nothing wrong. Isabella is a very sick woman. She's very twisted. She is evil, and she took pleasure in destroying him and destroying the children, along with many other lives. He had a sense of peace, and it allowed him to keep going, knowing that his children did not suffer. And though Joseph would never be the same, he was able to physically recover, and he started his life over. This ordeal made him stronger. And though Isabella turned out to be a monster, Joseph prayed for her. He prayed for her healing, and he would still always love her for the rest of his life as his first wife. So that is going to conclude today's story. Before Buddy and I say goodbye, I did just want to say that if any of you are suffering any type of mistreatment, please, whether you're man, woman, child, please seek help. Don't keep quiet. Do what's necessary to keep yourself protected. It happens to everyone, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's nothing to feel embarrassment. You have done nothing to deserve that kind of mistreatment, so please get help wherever you can. I hope that I was able to bring a little bit of relief to Joseph. Thank you so much for writing in and telling me your story and giving me the opportunity to write some fantasy justice for you. Now, in the next week, we are going to be continuing the story of the Predators with Lenox and the crew. So you'll want to make sure you come back and stay tuned for that. And of course, if you guys have any stories in which you'd like me to write some fantasy justice for, feel free to email me, and I will be more than happy to put that together for you and create a nice story just for you. I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you in a few days with the new story. As always, please take care of yourselves, and God bless.